That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, I will admit, I liked a few of these guys before the NFL draft, but I am smart enough to know that I'm stupid. I'm smart enough to realize that, hell, the NFL draft changes things. When we see the opinion of NFL scouting departments, when we see the opinion of NFL organizations and landing spots on top of this, we need to be making adjustments, and these are going to be players that I'm telling you, very, very rarely am I going to be drafting them. Now, of course, if you're playing in a Flock Dynasty League, don't be too surprised when I take one of these guys because you'll have access to my rankings. Really, those drafts get so damn skewed where there you do have 9 receivers going in the first round because this is a very strong wide receiver class. It's a little bit different, but we're going to be talking about for a regular Dynasty Fantasy Football League. Hopefully the leagues that the people watching this video are playing in. And of course, before we get into it, please go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel only if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. Leave a comment, let me know what I am missing with these players. And if you want to crush your Dynasty rookie drafts, our Dynasty rookie draft guide is now available on flockfantasy.com for everyone who pre-ordered the draft guide. Of course, thank you so much. It should already be sent to your email. If you cannot find it, please just check the spam, but I haven't heard that issue from anybody. So thank you again. And if you want to get that Dynasty rookie draft guide or any of our content on flockfantasy.com, make sure you use the promo code NFL Draft for a special discount. That promo code is going to end in about a week, so please take advantage of that now. But let's go into this, and let's start it off with a player that went from being my second ranked player overall in Dynasty Superflex leagues to now you cannot draft him in round 1, to now early round 2, mid round 2. I'm fine with it. Just please don't make him a first round selection. We're talking Malik Willis. Now with Malik Willis, trust me, I get it. The overall Dynasty community, the overall regular NFL draft community, I mean, the average person viewed Malik Willis as the quarterback 1 in this draft class. We were looking at an elite level athlete, someone that at Liberty, I mean, clearly demonstrated elite rushing upside, and he had a cannon for an arm as well. I mean, people were going all in on Malik Willis. I saw people taking Trevor Lawrence behind Malik Willis in Dynasty startup drafts. Now, I personally didn't draft Malik Willis at that price, but I wasn't coming out and saying that it was a horrible pick. I said that I kind of understood it based on the rushing upside. But that was when he was supposed to go round 1 in the NFL draft. That was when he was supposed to be a top 10 to 15 pick in the NFL draft, indicating that he would get the opportunity to start and demonstrate that rushing upside, which would directly correlate to fantasy success. Now, if you go and you look at our Dynasty rookie draft guide, you are going to find that we break down every single position for what matters and how to beat Dynasty ADP based on key metrics per position. At wide receiver, we have a ton of them. At running back, we have a ton of them. Quarterback, we keep it simple. We look at NFL draft capital, which gives us an idea of how NFL teams evaluate these quarterbacks on film, because I'll tell you right now, anybody telling you what they saw of the tape of Malik Willis on YouTube, their opinion does not really mean much. I mean, what matters a lot more is the fact that the Seattle Seahawks entire front office, the Seattle Seahawks entire scouting department, the Atlanta Falcons entire scouting department, all these people came out. They watched him. The people that are getting paid to do so said, oh, he's not going to hit at the next level. Like, let's not be overconfident in our ability. So NFL draft capital is going to be matter in telling us, A, what the people who are professionals see on film at the quarterback position, because you cannot just plug a quarterback in a model and know how it's going to come out the other side, because quarterbacks in college get affected by the head coach, the offensive line, the receivers, the running back. Everything's tied to the quarterback position. It's not as easy as just looking at their production. So we know what their on-field presence is with their tape by their draft capital. But more importantly, we're getting to this. We can have a good idea of how often these quarterbacks are going to be starting in the NFL based on where they go in the NFL draft. Now, I know everybody watching this video, I mean, trust me, I got so much hate for this. They all assume that Malik Willis is taking over for Ryan Tannehill after this upcoming season, because you look at Ryan Tannehill, not much guaranteed money left on the contract after this year. Looks like they can get out of it. Yada, yada, yada. Looks like Tannehill also 34 years old. Obviously, people want to overrate age when it comes to quarterback evaluation. What I want to do is I want to go back to 2014 and I want to look at quarterbacks that fell outside of the top 2 rounds, because you'll hear people bring up Russell Wilson. You'll hear people bring up Tom Brady. You'll hear people bring up Dak Prescott. Those are the 3 guys that everybody mentions over and over and over again. But the players they don't mention are the Kellen Monds of the world, the Ian Books, the Mason Rudolphs. These guys that all go in round 3 that people have some excitement for coming into the NFL draft, and they just never get a shot at the NFL level. So let's go through every quarterback drafted in round 3 and round 4 since then. And we'll have some takeaways from this. You have Kellen Mond, Davis Mills, a name I want to highlight right away. Ian Book, Jacob Eason, James Morgan the next year. The year after, Will Grier, Ryan Finley, Jarrett Stidham, Mason Rudolph, Kyle Loretta, Davis Webb, CJ Beathard, Joshua Dobbs, Jacoby Brissett, Cody Kessler, Connor Cook, Dak Prescott. Alarms going off because everybody thinks they can find the next Dak Prescott, Cordell Jones. Then you got Garrett Grayson, Sean Mannon. You have Logan Thomas. Yeah, he used to be a quarterback, and Tom Savage. So those were 24 quarterbacks that were drafted in the 3rd and 4th rounds of the NFL draft since 2014. And 2 of them hit. You had Dak Prescott and Davis Mills. That's 8.33% of these quarterbacks hitting at the next level. And what you'll find with a lot of these players, the majority of these options, is they never had a chance. They never had the opportunity to start for an NFL team. And even if, like, you see someone like Mason Rudolph starting, it's not because that team went into the season with the plan that he was going to be the starter. It's because Ben Roethlisberger goes down in front of you, so you go from being a career backup to being thrust into a starting job. Now, one thing that I also want to discuss, because we can sit here and talk about Dak Prescott and Davis Mills, but what ends up happening is if you're one of these quarterbacks from round 3, from round 4, and you get to start your rookie season, you get to start year 2, you get to start year 3, whenever that may be, if you are one of those players, you have to be excellent. Remember how good Dak Prescott was his rookie season. Remember how good Russell Wilson was his first year starting in Seattle. You have to be excellent. You have to be elite for that NFL team to say, hell, yeah, he's our guy going forward. You have to leave no doubts whatsoever, because we can pull up Davis Mills. Davis Mills is the perfect example because he goes out there last year and he is a better quarterback on paper, and a lot of film people want to say the same thing, than Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Justin Fields. Outside of Mac Jones, Davis Mills had the highest adjusted yards per attempt of any quarterback in the class last year. But how are people viewing Davis Mills right now? How many people are looking at Davis Mills and valuing him over Trevor Lawrence? Zero. Despite Davis Mills being a better quarterback his rookie year and possibly just as bad of a situation. Now, why is this? It's because Davis Mills didn't have the Dak Prescott season. He didn't have the Russell Wilson season. He had a good year for a rookie quarterback, but good is not going to cut it for your long-term job security. You can go to the running back position and see this in the NFL as well. I mean, you see Elijah Mitchell, the 49ers add a 3rd-round running back. You see Michael Carter. I mean, the New York Jets go out there and they take Breece Hall as the first running back off the board this year. It's so damn hard at the quarterback position to get really any value whatsoever if you don't have the pedigree going in. It's boring to say it. Trust me, I understand it, but it's the truth. You can't just point out Dak Prescott. You just can't point out Russell Wilson and say that's going to be Malik Willis, because the odds of that happening are so slim. Now, I will say, with Malik Willis, I'm fine drafting him in the 2nd round, even though he will have a lower hit rate than someone like James Cook, who should be going next to him. He'll have a lower hit rate than some of those other wide receivers like Wan'Dale Robinson, I'd say, probably even has a higher floor. But the difference is Malik Willis's ceiling, if he does hit based on his rushing upside, his ceiling is going to be significantly higher. So I would be fine drafting Malik Willis in the 2nd round of your rookie drafts based on his rushing upside, saying, hell, there's a low chance, there's a small probability that he really ever gets a long-term starting job in the NFL. But when that does happen, with his rushing upside, you know for a fact 100% of the time you can start him in fantasy. So I am willing in a Superflex league to take him in the second round. But outside of that, it's a long shot. Please, please, please don't point to outliers saying that you are significantly better than everybody else on this planet at evaluating the quarterback position, and you are going to be able to find the next Dak Prescott. You are going to be able to find the next Russell Wilson. You are going to be able to find the next Tom Brady. Because if you could consistently do that, I promise you, you would not be watching this YouTube video right now, because I can't come close to doing that. And I'm not going to pretend and lie to myself and lie to anybody else and act like I can. Please don't lie to yourself and draft Malik Willis in the first round just because you think you can find that guy. Now, very similarly, let's go over to another quarterback that went in the third round. Now, he has an easier path to start for his NFL team. Matt Corral. Now, if you pull up our rankings, you will see that despite Matt Corral having an easier path to claim that starting job for the Carolina Panthers, I have Matt Corral ranked behind Malik Willis. And the reason for this is I'm not viewing Matt Corral in a light where if he starts for the Carolina Panthers, he 100% has that elite upside. He 100% will be a quarterback that you are starting in fantasy. Like Malik Willis, we know with that rushing upside, we know you can start Jalen Hurts even if he isn't getting to 200 passing yards in a game because his rushing ceiling. Same thing with Willis. Matt Corral, you don't have that. So with Matt Corral, if you're drafting him in the first round, I simply don't understand why you don't just take that 112 that you were about to draft Matt Corral with. Why do you not just trade that for Davis Mills? Because we just went through this entire list. Davis Mills hit with a low chance of doing so, and he looked good his rookie season. So Davis Mills, based on him hitting his rookie year, his hit rate is already higher than someone like Matt Corral's with what I would project onto him. So why would you even roll the dice trying to find the next Davis Mills? Now, of course, I don't want to act like Matt Corral's ceiling is Davis Mills, but maybe even Davis Mills could take a step forward. And I'm not advocating to go out there and trade for Davis Mills. I don't want to make this video about that. But I just don't see why you're scratching the lotto ticket. Like, here's how I'd view it. I view like Matt Corral like a $2 lotto ticket, right? It's a $2 lotto ticket, but it's unscratched. It could be anything underneath there. Whereas Davis Mills, he himself was a $2 lotto ticket, but it was scratched last year, and underneath there was $5. What are you going to do? Are you going to take that $5 lotto ticket and just pocket the $5, which you should do? You should never buy a lotto ticket. Like, please be smart. Or are you going to take the unscratched $2 lotto ticket in Matt Corral, hoping, hell, maybe I win $5, maybe I win $10. No, you're probably going to lose. Probably going to lose. Take your small profit. Take the guy who already hit that has a similar profile. Like Malik Willis, Matt Corral, I've seen them going in round one. For the love of God, don't do it. Alec Pierce, going to be our next guy. With Alec Pierce, this is a wide receiver that clearly was a massive riser through the offseason. I mean, people began to get excited the closer and closer we got to the NFL draft. However, I never understood the hype with Alec Pierce. I mean, I loved me some Malik Willis right before the NFL draft. Back when Matt Corral was supposed to be a top 15 draft pick, people used to project Matt Corral to be the first quarterback off the board at the very beginning of this offseason. I love Matt Corral, but we have to change our opinion. Here, Alec Pierce, I'm not changing my opinion. Nothing has really changed. Wide receiver's not nearly as important at finding the draft capital than it's going to be at quarterback, because with wide receiver, the hit rate based on their draft capital is significantly different. Now, if we go over to Pierce, what we are looking for is production. But of course, we just can't put everything into a spreadsheet. You got to look at it with context. So Alec Pierce, 63 receiving yards a game, his final season at Cincinnati. That's kind of whatever. I mean, if you're playing at Arkansas and your passing offense only has 200 passing yards a game, then sure, that's kind of fine. But no, you had Desmond Ridder in that offense. You had Alec Pierce only accounting for 26.71% of the receiving yards on a per game basis at Cincinnati. Now, I will say there are wide receivers that have found success that have accounted for less than 30% of the receiving yards on a per game basis in their offense. And, I'm always about going back historically, doing that research, doing our due diligence. And you can find those wide receivers. You can find a lot of guys that had success with less than 30% of their team's receiving production. But what did those players look like? Those players look like DK Metcalf, Jerry Judy. And the reason I'm bringing these two guys up is because when I say a lot of players, there aren't many. And this is pretty much the two guys that stand out. But if we dive into the case of a DK Metcalf, of a Jerry Judy, these were players that their final season in college, they played at 20 years old. Their final season in college, when they played in the SEC, they played at 20 years old, indicating that they still had room to develop. Alec Pierce stayed all 4 years at Cincinnati. There is a massive difference between the two. And also, you should kind of be thinking about other things behind the scenes. We should be thinking of the context of the offense that you had in 2019 with Jerry Judy. You should be thinking of the context of the offense that you had in 2019 with DK Metcalf. And I apologize, it was 2019 with DK Metcalf and 2018 with Jerry Judy. I previously said the years they got drafted. But anyway, we go back to 2019 at Ole Miss with DK Metcalf. What happened there? Why did he have less than 30% of the team's receiving production on a per game basis, other than the fact that he was very young? I don't know if you've heard of this guy. He is a little bit under the radar, but you had A.J. Brown playing alongside him. Not only did you have A.J. Brown at Ole Miss, but you also had Elijah Moore as well as Dawson Knox. So if we're talking market share numbers, you need to be adjusting. You 100% need to be looking at DK Metcalf in a different light, which we have that in our wide receiver prospect model. So DK Metcalf, despite not having that elite level of production, can still pop in the model, because if you look at his production in the context that he was playing in an offense with Elijah Moore, A.J. Brown, and Dawson Knox, it's completely different. And with Jerry Judy in 2019, very, very similar. With Jerry Judy, you had Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs, all on that team. You have to be making that adjustment. So with those wide receivers, our model liked both of them. Our model liked both of them a lot. So I'm not sitting here saying, oh, just because Alec Pierce had less than 30% of his team's receiving production on a per game basis, he can't be successful, because we need to stack the other measures. We need to put context with the situation. So as we already said, he stayed all 4 years. So if we look at wide receivers that stayed all 4 years and had less than 30% of their team's receiving production on a per game basis their final season, you have Kelvin Benjamin, Chris Conley, Kenny Bell, Jamon Moore, Mike Williams, that's going to be a name we'll talk about in a little bit, Devin Smith, Deshaun Hamilton, Jalen Hurd, Paris Campbell, Van Jefferson, Terry McLaurin, another name we'll talk about in a little bit, and Braxton Miller. So there were 2 hits from that list. 2 hits. But what do we need to do? Look at that context. Look at why the numbers are the way that they are. And with Mike Williams, take a guess on how many pass catchers on that Clemson roster, his final season there, made it to the NFL draft and were selected. 5. You have Jordan Leggett, Deion Kane, Hunter Renfrow, Ray McLeod, Cornell Powell. Now, I'm not saying all those wide receivers were great hits at the NFL level, but what I am saying is you have quality wide receiver competition. You have wide receiver competition that was able to make it to the NFL and was able to get drafted. So inherently, we should be lowering the threshold for your production significantly down. So with Mike Williams, he popped in our model, but because that competition. And with Terry McLaurin, you had Paris Campbell, you had KJ Hill, and you had a very young Chris Olave. I don't even like including Olave there because he was so young. But nonetheless, you had competition for targets at Ohio State. That's not the case. You cannot make those excuses for Alec Pierce. So I'm saying very, very rarely do I ever say that an NFL team makes a mistake, because I think 9 times out of 10 NFL teams are making moves that we don't understand why they are. They're not playing fantasy football. But I think drafting Alec Pierce in the second round was a mistake from the Indianapolis Colts when they were taking him over Sky Moore. I think Sky Moore would have been a better fit in this offense, and very, 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 very rarely will I ever say an NFL team makes a mistake, because I think the majority of the time, if we are trying to say that, we are wrong. But on top of this, if you were drafting Alec Pierce in Dynasty leagues, if you're taking him at the beginning of the second, I think that's a mistake as well. I'm going to prefer Wan'Dale Robinson, even though with Robinson, he has the massive red flag with his size. I'm fine based on the production to take that red flag with his size compared to what I would be with a player like Alec Pierce. I'm going to be taking David Bell over Alec Pierce. Yeah, David Bell has the concern with his speed, but David Bell has the production at a very young age at Purdue as well. So I personally am not going to be drafting Alec Pierce. I hope I was able to give some context with that situation. Now, I will mention one player at the end. This isn't someone that's going high in rookie drafts. This isn't someone that's going high in really any league, but I will at least mention Justin Ross, because this is a player that I was talking about being one of my favorite pre-draft targets before. Our favorite third-round draft targets. Remember, we were saying avoid all the running backs in the third round of rookie drafts, and instead we are going with Wan'Dale Robinson, David Bell, and Justin Ross. And with Justin Ross, we did put an asterisk with it, saying we had no idea what was going on with his neck injury, but what were we waiting for? We were waiting for NFL talent evaluators, NFL medical staffs to be able to evaluate Justin Ross themselves and then tell us through his NFL draft capital what the odds were that that injury was too significant to overcome. And based on Justin Ross going undrafted in the NFL draft and that neck injury combined with it, clearly that was a measure that we just didn't know exactly what was going to happen with. And now that we have that data point, Justin Ross himself is undraftable. Like in our initial rankings that we put out right after the first 3 rounds, I still had Justin Ross as, I believe, the 36th ranked player overall. He's falling below that. I mean, with Justin Ross, you have to be taking him probably at the end of the 4th round, the beginning of the 5th round. Now it's very, very sad. Very, very sad, but it is what it is. And of course, thank you so much for being a part of the flock, supporting the channel. If you have not done so already, go down there, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope you have a great day as well.